3 different people, 2 different tools, 1 simple task. Create a new client project. Easy, right? But here's what really happened. 3 versions of the onboarding checklist appeared. 2 folders were created with slightly different names, and none of them matched the CRM entry, which was missing half the fields anyway. Was the team confused? Yes. Was the process unclear? Also yes. But the real culprit? The workflow didn't match the data underneath it. Welcome back to Tech Talks with Grace, the show where we turn operational chaos into clarity with automation, AI, and smarter systems. If you joined me for episode 3, you learned how to map a workflow, the steps, the owners, the decisions, the handoffs. But today, we take it a level deeper. Because mapping a workflow is only half the story. Understanding how that workflow connects to your data is what makes automation actually work. This episode is called Connecting Workflow Mapping to Data Integrity. By the end of today, you'll know why your workflow map reveals your biggest data problems, how to evaluate any workflow using the 5 data integrity categories, where inconsistencies hide and how to fix them, and 3 quick practical takeaways you can use today. Let's get into it. Section 1. Why workflow maps expose data breakdowns. A workflow map is like turning on the lights in a room you thought you knew. Suddenly, you see gaps, loops, missing information, steps people think they're doing but aren't, tools that don't talk to each other, data handoffs that fall apart the second someone is busy. But here's the key. Most workflow problems are actual data problems. I'll say that again. Most workflow problems are actually data problems. You can't automate a process with inconsistent fields. You can't build a smooth onboarding if the CRM and project manager use different naming conventions. You can't trust reports if half the fields are optional and everyone interprets them differently. Think of workflow mapping as the X-ray. Data integrity is the diagnosis. And once you look at them together, the real issues become obvious. So I know I mentioned the 5 data integrity categories. Let's go over that. Evaluating your workflow using a system that never lies. We're going to walk through the same categories we introduced back in episode 1, but now through the lens of your workflow map. As you listen, picture one workflow that you mapped recently. Maybe onboarding, maybe intake, lead qualification, or delivery. Ready? Let's go. Let's talk about consistency. Ask yourself, do people do the same step the same way every time? Workflow maps expose inconsistency extremely fast. Look at 2 different forms collecting different information possibly. Are steps done out of order depending on who's working today? Do you have free text fields that mean 12 different things? Do your naming conventions shift depending on someone's mood, maybe their memory changed, or the phase of the moon? So just think about it like this. Consistency has to be the same thing over and over. Why? Because when steps aren't consistent, your data won't be either, and automation becomes unreliable. So what do you look for? You need to look in your workflow map and double check that there are no duplicate steps. Double check that steps people aren't skipping just because they're busy. And also any place where the input varies from one person to another. Consistent naming conventions. Now let's talk about accuracy. Is the data right? Is it up to date? Is it based on assumptions or real facts? Workflow maps show you where the accuracy breaks down. It shows you where there's manual data entry. It shows you copy pasting between tools, if there's any missing validation rules, and if fields are filled with guesses because the client didn't answer yet. You have to understand that if your data is not accurate, the automation is going to multiply whatever accuracy you currently have, but it will also do the reverse. Any inaccurate data will be multiplied and chaos will be multiplied. So ensure that you're looking at your workflow mapping and it shows you exactly where things are drifting. So just check any step where data is entered by hand, Check anytime that there's might be someone fixing things later. We've all heard that, right? And if there's any information that lives in someone's head instead of in a system or a standard operating procedure. Okay, now that we've talked about completeness, let's talk about connectivity. Are your tools supporting your workflow? Are they slowing it down? Your workflow map will reveal double entry, tools that don't sync, incorrect field mappings, data jumping between platforms with no owner. And of course, connectivity issues will create this invisible friction that can show up in your delays, in confusion, or a broken automation. So you need to look for every single point where the information moves between systems or within the system, every point where the information is integrated with any other tools, and anytime that someone is all of a sudden having to create some sort of manual workaround because the sync never works right. These are common tools, common issues that people are running into with common tools. And so you need to really look at your workflow for those types of breakdowns. Do my tools speak to each other? Are they supporting the workflow or are they slowing it down? Let's go and talk a little bit about completeness. Are your essential fields actually being collected? Because when you map a workflow, you often discover that a step requires information that hasn't been collected yet. You and I all know what that can do down the line to all of not just your data, but your entire workflow. One team ends up gathering data details, then the other team didn't know they needed it, and all of a sudden this information is sitting in some sort of bucket. Tasks end up moving forward with missing information because we had to keep going, right? Completeness breaks the workflows more than anything else. So you need to look for those required fields that are not required in the form. Tasks that start before all the information exists, and approvals that are based on incomplete data. Now let's talk about a portion that I've probably mentioned a few times already by now, but now I'm going to mention it very specifically. That is data stewardship. So who keeps your data clean over time? Not a set it and forget it, because data is not one of those things that just lives in a silo. It will live as it moves from tool to tool, system to system, and as you get updates from actual people, right? So how do you have your data reviewed? Is there somebody who's taking care of this over time? Your workflow mapping will expose the ownership gap, right? A step exists, no one owns it. It's going to show you that your data lives in a system and who maintains it, if anybody. No one knows who fixes duplicates or errors. That's a big problem. And updates depend on the hero employee who knows where everything is, knows how to do all of the processes, and does it all correctly 90, 75, 60% of the time. It's all in their head, right? Without data stewardship, even the best workflow will fall apart. So you need to make sure in your workflow map that you have steps with clear owners. So double check that there are no steps without clear owners. Tools that everyone is responsible for. So you need to look for tools no one is responsible for. And areas where mistakes accumulate because no one is assigned to review them. All right, you know how I am about my case studies. Let's go over the story of a workflow that looked fine until they mapped it. Meet a fictional but very real world team, Silverline Social, a small marketing agency. So they believed their onboarding was solid. They had clear steps, clear owners, a little manual, but manageable. Then they mapped it. And here's what they found. The CRM required quote unquote company name. The project tool required legal entity. 2 different fields, 2 different meanings. Billing details were collected during sales, but finance also emailed the client just to confirm. The onboarding checklist lived in 3 places, depending on who created the project. And the automation that they attempted last year, it broke because the form that triggered it had 2 versions floating around. So what did they learn here? The workflow wasn't the issue. The data integrity behind the workflow was. Once they align the fields, standardize the naming, and clean the entire intake form, onboarding time dropped by 40% without adding a single new tool. So everything we went over, the 5 different categories: 1, consistency; 2, accuracy; 3, completeness; 4, connectivity; and 5, data stewardship. You should have a good framework for reviewing your workflows and understanding the different things that you need to look at whenever you're looking at workflows and mapping them out. Map them out with these 5 categories in mind, and understanding that you need to know exactly where all of your data not just lives, but who touches it, who owns it, who maintains it, how clean is it, and what do I do now that I sort of understand what 5 things I need to look at? Well, as I've always promised you, I'm going to give you 3 actionable takeaways that you can take from this episode and take care of your data right now. Here are 3 simple steps. I like to give you 3. And again, connect your workflow map to better data. Step 1, highlight your inconsistent steps. Find any step that varies depending on who is doing it. That's your first place to standardize. Step 2, identify incomplete data points. Circle any step that depends on information that hasn't been collected yet or isn't collected consistently. Write it down and circle it. Step 3, note one tool connection that needs improvement. Pick an integration or a handoff that breaks the most often and fix that before adding automation. Remember, small adjustments will compound fast. Garbage in, garbage out. Data integrity that is good maintains data accuracy and completeness. Data integrity that is bad, has garbage data, will give you very quick, very fast chaos in your automation. So you're not automating chaos. You want to automate cleanliness, consistency, and good data. So hopefully you took away from today that workflow mapping isn't just about clarity. It's about exposing the data issues that break automation, create chaos, and slow down your team. Today, we connected the workflow steps, data integrity, tool behavior, ownership, and the conditions needed for automation that actually works. In this next episode, we're going to introduce something extremely powerful: your data integrity scoring system. I'll be providing a simple framework to measure how ready your business truly is for automation. It's clear, it's practical, and it removes all the guesswork. If this episode was helpful, share it with someone on your team who's involved in your workflows. Mapping is always better together. I'm Grace, and this is Tech Talks with Grace. See you in episode 5.